Hello, everyone. Looks like we have some folks joining now. I am Deja from Quest, and I'd like to welcome you to today's Reconnect Dive Deep session. I have a few reminders before we get started. Attendees will remain muted throughout the session. However, if you'd like to be unmuted to ask a question, we'd ask if you use the raise the hand feature. It's the bottom left of your screen, and I will be able to give you permission to speak at that time. You can also type your questions in the Q&A module. Our presenters are comfortable with you guys asking questions throughout, so please let us know if you need any assistance. At this time, I'll turn it over to Teresa. We also have Cameron on here as well. I think Teresa will be the main speaker, but I do think Cameron will be joining in as well. So let us know if you have any questions. Thank you guys.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Teresa Leung, and we'll be presenting Oracle Guided Learning and giving a vantage point and from our experience making end user training easy. So presenting today again, Teresa Leung. I'm the Executive Director for Kaiser Foundation Research Institute, which is the research arm for Kaiser Permanente medical group, and we'll talk a little bit about our organization. Jessica Mann is not able to be in our presentation today, but I work in partnership with her in the implementations with her under Spirit MC as our consultant. And Cameron?
Hi, everybody. Cameron Clerk, Vice President of Spear MC. I'm filling in. Jessica is on her way to Australia, where Teresa and I will be joining her this weekend to do presentations at the Higher Education User Group Conference in Australia. So we're excited about that, but she's not able to join us today. I'm filling in. I lead our Oracle Guided Learning practice at Spear MC, and as you may already know, we are the exclusive partner for Oracle Guided Learning for PeopleSoft. You may have attended my session yesterday, which was a quick demo. And later today, we also have another customer panel where you're going to get to hear from 3 additional customers on how they're using Oracle Guided Learning in addition to this whole session with Kaiser Permanente. We're excited to have today, and welcome.
So going through today's agenda, we obviously did a little bit of introductions, but we'll do introductions of our organizations as well. We will give you an overview of the Oracle Guided Learning, and then Cameron will lead us through a quick demo of the system, a live demo. I will go through and share the learnings that we've had at Kaiser Permanente and the implementation, and then overall Oracle Guided Learning lessons, our lessons learned throughout implementations. So now a little bit about Kaiser Permanente. So Kaiser is one of the nation's largest integrated health systems. We have over 12 million members across that are members of our health plan inside of Kaiser. We have close to $100 billion in revenue on an annual basis this year. We're probably going to be exceeding that mark. 24,000 physicians, 200,000 employees. And then we're operating hospitals in various geographic areas, but 39 hospitals and 734 medical offices. So we have quite a large user population and employee populations within that span Kaiser Permanente. A little known fact about Kaiser Permanente, we do in fact have a pretty sizable research arm as well. We receive research funds from a federal base, from our industry partners for clinical trial and device trials. We also have a lot of partnerships and collaborations with other research institutions or even universities. So that values at about $344 million a year in sponsored research funding and over 2,000 studies. Again, 30% of them being clinical trials and about 70% being other research investigational best practice studies. The personnel on the research side, we have 1,600 research support staff and 180 research leaders producing a lot of publications and articles every year. When we talk about Kaiser Permanente, because one of the things about the vast area, I think if you're in our local region, which is in California, it's well known, but we're actually operating across 8 geographic regions, spanning all the way to the East Coast in Maryland, DC area, Georgia, Colorado, in the Northwest region, which is Washington, as well as Oregon, Hawaii. So we're quite broad. So we utilize the PeopleSoft system that we have coined OneLink as our tool to track and process transactions across most of the FSCM modules and platforms. That would include accounts payable, our purchase order transactions, our expense transaction. It's resulting in over 900,000 jobs processed on a monthly basis to get all of the operations running. And then over 250,000 users. And we know that seems like a lot, but if you look back at the other slide with the number of employees that we have on an annual basis or at any given time, excuse me, that's a pretty sizable population of users. And because we're using them on 12,000 employees touch OneLink or PeopleSoft on a daily basis and processing all these transactions. On the majority, we use it for our expense reporting. So that's a big area for those reimbursement expenditures. And the production support team is heavily involved in our day-to-day transactions, processing over 40,000 tickets a month. So again, the wide range of platforms that we're utilizing, we're touching most everything from asset management, buy to pay, and then we have bolt-on edge applications that we're also utilizing in conjunction with our system. We are on FFCM 9.2 with PeopleTools 8.5. 5817 and then on image 43. So we do have a recurring process in which we're pushing out images on an annual basis. Pass it to Cameron.
I'll take over here. So hopefully you've all been at some of our sessions this week. We've got a lot of them. If you've gone to any of the PeopleSoft conferences, you'll have seen our name SpearMC quite a bit. We do, really, we're focused on PeopleSoft. Really, that's our thing, PeopleSoft. It's all things related to PeopleSoft. So whether it's, the type of work we do, managed service consulting, but really what a lot of people know about us is from our training. We've been really one of the remaining firms that really dedicates a lot of effort, investment into our training model and training classes and content. And due to that, as well as our embrace of emerging technology, as you can see, one of our pillars here, due to that, Oracle approached us to become the exclusive partner for Oracle Guided Learning. Kaiser Permanente was the pioneer to do this with Oracle, to build this out, to take Oracle Guided Learning, which is the SaaS application, which we'll talk about, and bring it into their world for PeopleSoft. And Oracle needed somebody, a partner, to kind of take it out to the rest of the PeopleSoft customers, and that's us. So we're the exclusive partner for licensing and value-added services is related to that licensing, which we'll talk about here in a bit. So let's go next slide. So we've got a bunch of recognitions and specializations, which I'll just skip for now because it's we want to get to the Oracle Guided Learning demo. But come to one of our full sessions, we'll talk more about this, I guess. Let's see. So let's keep moving to the next slide. So, as I mentioned, we do provide a lot of content, and this is just a little view of the next coming months. We're doing a ton of training on all the pillars as well as the technical tools. We're really excited to expand a bunch of our campus solutions offerings, and we're going to be doing a bunch of stuff there. I personally teach the basic and advanced query classes for all the pillars. We have others that are part of this conference that teach some of these other pieces. So we really invest a lot in all of you. And we feel that empowering all of you to understand the software better, to get your people to understand the software better, means you'll get more value out of the application. And ultimately, you can make your choice at some point if you need to get off of PeopleSoft. But if as long as you're going to stay on PeopleSoft, we want to invest in you and empower you to understand the application. So we still do a lot of training. We're actually expanding our bunch of these classes are actually new classes that we're just rolling out. So certainly check it out. Our website has all the public classes. We also do private classes as well. If you don't see something on the public schedule, just reach out and we can always do a private session for you. All right, so let's go next slide, and we're going to talk now about Oracle Guided Learning. Now, I've got a couple slides just to kind of introduce the topic, and then I'll do a little quick demo. So the digital adoption platforms are all around us. And if you were on my demo yesterday, I did a half an hour demo on OGL. OGL and digital adoption platforms are kind of hiding in plain sight. And in this case, you can see not PeopleSoft. This is actually my iPhone. It's an image of my iPhone after an iOS upgrade from last fall. And what happened is after that iOS upgrade, I got back into my application or into the phone, and I opened up my weather application or my mail application, and something had changed. But Apple needed to communicate to me as the user that there was new features there, and the application looked the same, but there was new features. And so the way they did that is by rolling out this essentially digital adoption platform piece to tell me that there were things that were new that I could learn about. It was very subtle, and I could click on tap for more detail to understand where, something about the daily weather, or to understand that I could send later by holding down the send button. These are very subtle messaging. I could close it if I didn't want to know about it. And little by little, I'm trained on how to use the application, even though I never said as a user, I want to get training on this. If you go to the next slide, Teresa, essentially what that is a digital adoption platform is essentially no code software that sits on top of your application. It's not actually embedded in the code of your application, but it sits on top of the application. And there's essentially hooks where it says, if I see certain things or if a user comes to a certain page, I want to introduce little tips or potentially a walkthrough, a task list, self-help menus, all those pieces. So that's generally what a digital adoption platform is. Oracle now has their version called Oracle Guided Learning, and it now is available for PeopleSoft. So let's take a look at that. So go to the next slide. So Oracle Guided Learning is embedded in the application in the sense that it sits on top and it's called from or it's hooked into PeopleSoft. And I don't have time today to go through all those details, but certainly can and I do all the private demos for us. So if you want to, we can go through that and talk about the technical detail. But essentially, it's embedded in your application in real time, and that's a big game changer. If you think about traditional training models and how a user has to go and understand that they need to pull training, maybe it's from a SharePoint or it's from an intranet site, or they have an offline document that gives them a job aid on how to do things. That's all what we call look away training. It's not in the application at the point of need. And so OGL is now at the point of need, real time in the application. And that allows us to actually walk somebody through a transaction. It allows us to see what the person's doing and offer help if we see them doing something wrong. It actually can be used for messaging and a lot of other things. So what this does is going to lead to a faster time to productivity, not only for your core users who are people that are going to need, maybe they're new employees, and they need to understand how to use the application because they need to actually memorize essentially how to do a transaction, whether that's some kind of employee onboarding or a benefits piece in administration, or it's an AP clerk that needs to know how to enter invoices. They need to understand how to do their job, and so these guides will help them do that. They'll even help them understand maybe more niche sort of pieces like a field that exists on a page that they don't rarely use, but if they need to, they can have a little smart tip to help them understand what that thing is. It really shines when we talk about your casual users, though, the people who are not the ones that need to memorize how to do a transaction and frankly don't care to memorize how to do a transaction. These are people who are very casually coming in and they need to do, for example, an employee that needs to do a life event. They're not doing life events every day. They just had a baby. They don't plan to have another one in the next month or two. And so they don't remember how to do this thing or to update something in PeopleSoft. So for them to know that they have a guide to say, how do I enter that I've just had a baby and I need to enter that in as a dependency and a dependent and set them up for benefits and all that. They can get help with that in a way that they would never know where to go for something that's so unique and rare. The last piece that's really a game changer is the ability for a support organization or training to understand what's happening, who's doing what in PeopleSoft. Okay. So it's a level of analytics that allows you to sort of see who is actually running through these training guides and these process guides. If somebody calls into a help desk and says, how do I do such and such a thing? Normally the model is, well, I think there's some training for that. Let me send you off to some training. But now you can actually see if that person's actually taken that guided process in PeopleSoft, and it really is a game changer. That level of analytics to look at what people's doing really changes the game for your support group. And really, what we're seeing is a dramatic decrease in support tickets across the board for users and organizations that are increasing their adoption of OGL. And Kaiser, Teresa, I don't know if you can speak to that piece, but I know that there's been in the past, you guys have published some of your decreases in your support tickets. So maybe that's something you'll talk about later. All right, so let's go on and let's take a look at what OGL is. I'm going to do just got a couple of slides here. I'm going to cut out these slides to actually do a live demo to show this to you real time. But you can get this deck and see some of the slides and some of the points about how this application works, as well as some of the background and on how you set up content and all that kind of stuff. And again, like I said, very open to doing another demo for your organization. Just reach out and we can do that. So let me, Teresa, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to go into PeopleSoft to actually do it. All right, I need you. It says I need you to stop sharing, Teresa, and then I'll share my screen. Okay. All right, I'm going to go in. And if you were on my call yesterday, the demo, I actually demoed out of financials. Today, I'm going to actually demo out of HCM, and it's a little bit different screens, but similar concepts and use cases. I'm going to go ahead and log in. And when I log into this one, Teresa, you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. So as I log in here, did I click sign in? Try that again. Okay, as I log in, what you'll see is immediately I get a pop-up message. Again, this is a choice how we designed it, but it's a message welcoming me to this specific screen, meaning the first startup screen in PeopleSoft, the homepage, and it's telling me, hey, welcome to this environment. For information, contact such and such a person to learn more about how org guide learning works. Click here. Now, this model, this technique, can be used for a lot of different use cases. Let's say you have a new employee that's the first time they come into PeopleSoft and you want to welcome them and you want to give them a set of tasks that they should do. They need to maybe update their password, maybe not. They need to change their preferences. They need to set up their emergency contacts. And we want you to go through those steps to do those things. So we can actually see the person's new and actually offer that guidance to them to go do those things. The other thing is this model works for, again, same technique, same technology, but a different use case. Let's say we've got a situation where a user goes to a screen and we've identified that there's a bug on the screen. It's not necessarily an Oracle bug, but it's the way we're seeing that people are doing something that is causing them to get off of the happy path and creating a problem for us from a data perspective. We can actually see that and precisely and more specifically put a message on for just that person to see that we want to help them and guide them through a different way of doing things to get them on a happy path. This completely changes the game because in the traditional model without OGL, if you find that there's an issue with the system, maybe you have a bunch of users reporting that there's an issue, the only model is you send out a message to a broad audience and tell them there's a problem. That's a bad way of communicating, and you communicate to a lot of people who don't really want to be communicated with. This way, we can really surgically tell people about there's an issue and we want them to get on the back a happy path. Again, same technical sort of way of doing this messaging, but a different use case. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and close this. You'll notice there I have a help center over here. This is my entire library of all my guides, and I can do a search for different guides. That's in a case where I know I want to pull information, but I also have the ability to put smart tips on any screen, and these smart tips can then help people understand something about that screen or that field. In this case, I have a little tip to say, did you know that you can create your own homepage with personalized tiles? Click here to do it. So it's a way for me to now suggest things to people. And this is great to help change people's behavior. Maybe I want to encourage people to use search. And so I sort of bring them over. Maybe as soon as they try to click on menu, I pop up a message and say, did you know that you can do this through search? And I can start to change people's behavior because of what I'm seeing them do. So that is a great way to sort of very subtly help people, even if they don't know they're needing help. But let me go in here and just suggest that I do want help. And in this case, I want to enter my banking details, and I don't really know how to do that. And again, it's something I do very rarely. So I've entered in this word bank. It's popped up the one guide that says add banking details. I'm going to go ahead and click on this, and it's going to launch me into a guided process now that's going to walk me through how to do this specific thing. I'm going to go ahead and click on this, telling me over here, go ahead and expand the dropdown. I click on that. It knows I'm doing the thing it's asking me to do, so it takes me to the next step. In this case, employee self-service. I'll click on that. Notice that it scrolled me down to this tile. It knows based on the HTML layer where this tile is on the screen. Again, this is fluid, and that tile could have been up at the top for you where it's down at the bottom for me. It's not looking for a specific spot on the screen. It's looking for the HTML object, and it finds it, and it tells me it's right here. Go ahead and select banking. So I'm going to click on that. It takes me to the next screen, and it says, go ahead and click add. So again, I come to screens, and one thing that I've heard from a lot of users is a lot of these screens where it has the add button, it's no longer a button that says add, it's this little plus sign up here. It's a little bit hard for people to understand when they first come in. But with Oracle Guided Learning, I can draw their attention right here and say, this is where you click on, this is for add, right? So again, something I can do with OGL that you really don't have a model of PeopleSoft to address this issue other than essentially customization. So let me go ahead and click on that. I'm now into a screen. At this point, you'll notice that there's multiple things to do, and it doesn't know when I'm done. So it's going to say, hey, go ahead and do these things. And when you're done, go ahead and click on next. So let me go ahead and enter some information. Now, I could have put smart tips here to say what bank account to use or bank ID, the account number. I could have offered policy information, all sorts of different kinds of things. Let me go ahead and get in here and click on a bank. I'm gonna go ahead and put in account number. It says to put it, retype it. I think I'm done. There's no other required fields. I'm gonna click on next, and it's gonna tell me go ahead and click on save. So I will click on save again as I do the thing that tells me to do. I'm done. It tells me I'm done with the thing. Again, I could offer additional guidance after that for more information. Click here, do this. We go ahead and click on done. And it has this nice feedback loop that now gives me the opportunity as the user to provide feedback. And maybe I give it 4 stars because I say, this was good, but can you help me understand international bank accounts, banks, or something like that, right? So I can go ahead and submit that. That then goes into the backend analytics for your support people, for your training people to understand that. That might be a specific question that somebody can follow up with to see that bit of feedback. It might be something that we could say, you know what, let's offer a smart tip in this guide to offer help to understand how to handle international banks. We see a lot of people asking this question. Let's go ahead and just put that, adjust that guide to offer that guidance.
Hey,
I'm done.
Cameron, before you
Yeah.
move on, we have a couple of questions in the
Yeah. So
Q&A.
just give me 1 second. So
Okay.
I'm done with that specific guide, and it's very subtle. I'm done with it, and I can keep moving. Again, this was a model where I pulled in a training, but at any point I could subtly push that out to people. Okay, so that's it for. There's a lot more I could show, but I'm going to stop it because I want to talk about Kaiser. In the meantime, I'll answer just a couple of questions here that are coming in. And let me see. Okay, so is there a difference between OGL activity guides or activity guides are part of OGL? Activity guides is a PeopleSoft construct that allows you to do a train stops and step-by-step process. OGL can offer guidance on top of activity guides to help you understand on each screen, still smart tips about that screen, messaging to say, here's what you're supposed to put on this. So they actually can work together. OGL is not in PeopleSoft. It's a separate application that sits on top of PeopleSoft. So that's the difference between those two. What happens if the user has deleted the tile needed for the script from the page? So if you don't do anything special, the guide, the process guide would just stop because it doesn't see the tile that it's expecting. If it's a situation where you think that's going to be very common, we can do something a little bit more fancy where it's called essentially some step conditions that says if it doesn't see it, I can guide them into a different message and it says, hey, we see that you don't have this tile. Email the help desk if you need access to this, or email security, that sort of thing. So you still have some intelligence to understand how to deal with that. Are the guide messages accessible for screen reader users? Yes, it's compliant with all of Oracle's guidance for accessibility, and that's a whole nother conversation that if you'd like to ping me afterwards, and we can get you hooked up with accessibility features. Can you use OGL for non-org products? Yes, you can. It works for any HTML application. Obviously, it's embedded here straight into PeopleSoft, and there's some code that does that through App Designer. But it can be used for any other non-Oracle application as well, as long as it's HTML application. And with that, I think I've gone over my time, and I'm going to stop and pass it back to you so she can really talk about what she wants, what we all want to talk about, which is how Kaiser is using OGL. And let me stop sharing.
Great. Thanks, Cameron. Back to share. Okay. So as Cameron already went over a lot of the just the live demo functions of the OGL. Here's a few facts about why and the benefits that it brings in using OGL.
And Teresa, if I could back in
Go
here, I
ahead.
think you can skip some of these slides and get just down to your stuff. But one thing I was going to show and I didn't, when go to the next one. Let's see. I think you have to click through here. It's going to kind of take you through a couple of bullets. Just go ahead and click through there. This is showing us sort of the back end, how to set up content. This is a little bit about the analytics piece. And then the next one I want to show. So the step guides, the job aids are a great way. And we didn't talk about this, I didn't demo it, but you can actually look at a guided process without actually doing it. And this, so it's actually a job aid that you can actually look at. These are the job aids are built automatically as part of the build out of your content. There's nothing extra you need to do to build this. It just is a screenshot and messaging, and it puts it into a nice digital form. And then you can, of course, take it out to PDF. You can print it. You can even email it as well. And that's a really great thing for a help desk to be able to say, hey, let me just email you this job aid. It's all straight from the OGL tool, or it can be accessed through PeopleSoft. So
Thank you. So learning from our experience implementing OGL at Kaiser. So there's a few pieces that I wanted to convey here. One, our team, and it's our OneLink support team, has really put together a whole business process for rolling out guided learning across all of the various modules that we have. The first step in doing that is looking at who are the potential audience and users that would need to have additional training. Where are there a lot of large casual users, like Cameron was talking about, where you might have someone in the system infrequently? They're only traveling once a year, or they're only doing a particular transaction infrequently, and so quarterly or the end of the year processes. If there's external users, so in our case and situation, we have where we have our vendors have a point of contact to put in and load supplier information and data in the system. So having external users understand and be able to navigate through those screens would be important for us. And where we're often needing to change knowledge. So new users are added very frequently. So we're going to do that set of high level review in terms of how people are using the system itself. And then we look at the transactions again, how frequently, how complex the transactions are, and do an analysis on what to include in a step-by-step guide, or what could we or would we exclude in that particular case. So this example is when we are creating expense reports, what's a more difficult or complex parts of the transaction where we need more guidance. There could be policy implications, and we want to make sure that we incorporate that information. Business feedback, this is where I come in. So my job at Kaiser is to I am the owner for our grants area and information. So the OneLink support team comes to me and says, okay, well, what type of transactions are being added? If we're doing a new enhancement, we want to make sure that we're covering training and some end user support in that new enhancement. And sometimes I look at what are new instances, or where do we might have gaps in our information, or where we might be error prone in terms of data entry. And so that will require us to add some areas for OGL. Overall, using this approach, we've been able to implement with guides, process guides, smart tips, message guides, and all the various things that are listed here. So with the process guides, over 300 process guides in our overall system, being able to walk people through step by step, and helping them through the various tasks that they have in front of them. And especially and I'll give you the example of our expense report processing. That has been where we see the most level of usage because they're individuals that are not using the expense report reimbursement module very frequently and need those reminders of how to submit and how to process it. Smart tips, those hovering texts that we go through have a little bit less usage there. Message guides with those pop-up messages that come that when you enter into the application, and announcing new features and functions, and the various other components, and less usage there. So when we look at implementation of the Oracle Learning Guide, what makes it a success for us? How do we measure that? Well, one of the big things is, and I think this is a huge advantage, especially for me as the owner for these particular processes, is to make sure that it's actually being used. So I'm looking at, and I get reports about the use of the guides. How often are they used? Are they used in particular areas? Again, because we're geographically dispersed, I will see whether or not we need help or training, more hands-on training in a particular area. Who's using them? How often that they were viewed? That might be an indicator also of needing to look at a particular area. Maybe it's a new policy implementation. So we want to look at that trend. Unique users, so how many new people are touching the applications or touching those guided learning tools, if it's either the employees or our suppliers. We look at top trending guides. So if there was guides that are going up in use, it's probably because we implemented a new component. And so we want to see that. So it's basically looking at these various trends and tracking to make sure that it's congruent with what management would think would be happening. I want to know that I expect that there are usage in a particular area or a particular population of people, because we have done some enhancements, or because we're implementing something new, or it's just that time of the year. So that helps us with that. Trending analysis will help us look at, do we need, if there was any changes. The flash tips are really interesting because it does help, and looking at the number of views of them, and helps to notify individuals where we have system changes or policy changes. For instance, we recently went through some significant travel changes in our meal allotment for per diem reimbursements. And so those flash chips do help ensure that individuals are putting the right information in the system, and avoids the number of exceptions that come back through. We look at the top trending guides again, and the reason why I had talked about before. And then support and training daily group links are used consistently to have that. What are we? What's the trend this year over the previous year? This is an example of the dashboard that we have in terms of receiving at my level, a person that would have oversight of the processes or the components, the system components. So I look at the guides, how many are they used, how many times they were used in a particular period. Is that a trend up or down for my area? So that's really key indicators for all of the things that we're looking at. And then here's information about the top trending guides, and it gives a little bit of detail of the particular guide. It populates the guide name, and we're able to look at the guides, each of the guides, and make sure that this makes sense to us. And then features viewed, which components or links were viewed and clicked into for any given user at any given time. This is an example of the dashboards that we get presented from a reporting standpoint. This is the delivered dashboard in terms of what we would configure in the system, and providing the level of detail similar to what our custom dashboard said, but we do the custom dashboard to make it very easy for us to view the data in one single page. And then this is what is generating out of the system to produce and configure that. So for grants, we'll give you a use case that we had a couple of years ago. So we had developed a grants guide for the first time, and utilizing that for our main ability to issue training to a large population. So we launched our Bernard J. School of Medicine at Kaiser. And in doing that, because there were all new users, new to the system, new to the system processes, new policies, procedures, and then they also had some of the faculty that's in the School of Medicine had a sizable grant program coming over. We needed to figure out a way to ease the training tools that we were using. So in previous iterations of rollouts of our grants tool, we would go into a classroom environment and have people with laptops and go through the paper manual and be able to do that. We were in this case, for the first time, and we've subsequently only used this approach when launching our grants, a new grants instance to a part of our organization. We were able to deliver that training in a proctored training using Oracle guided learning. So that gave them the in-system experience to actually be able to produce the transactions instead of going into a testing environment in a traditional classroom setting. The training consisted of using the guides to complete the grant related transactions and really helped making sure that there was a clear understanding of each of the levels of the transactions, and that there was clear understanding from the various users about how to process the transactions in the system. And my feeling and the feedback that we've gotten has been that having the ability to actually drill in, understand as the queues come up and the pop-ups come up, that they're understanding how to enter in the information correctly into the system. And if there is an error, what the errors were, so that they can improve at their knowledge and expand their knowledge of not just how to do it, but why do they need to do it in a particular way? Oh, sorry. Keep going the wrong way. Okay, so this is for the grant side, the different guides that we have. And then we had another implementation that we use what is called for a custom built add-on that we what we call the project allocation template, was a custom component of our PeopleSoft system. And so for doing that, we implemented 5 new guides specifically for training on the PAT system, in addition to what was already covered across the various grant types of transactions. So again, these are the additional grant transactions that we have. So it ranges from entering in new grants to all of the various areas of billing, AR, accounts receivable. So in terms of looking at the guided learning and how we produce it, you can see that we'll have ability for each of the particular processes that might be new or need additional review. We have those help guides, those help click-ins, so that you could go into a particular guide right from our agenda screen in which we're providing that training. And then that help link is also a component of our homepage on our OneLink site. So you can get to what Cameron was showing in the demo right from our home screen. And by clicking this, you get the pop-ups of a list of our training modules, as well as being able to go into the subcomponents like the support page here that's being shown. Once you click through, we'll give you a tour of how you're getting to those PAT guided learning tools that we have. So this one is I can search for the different guides through the top search menu. And by clicking in and putting in PAT, everywhere that PAT comes up, then the various guides come up for it. So then I will click in one of those guides, which is like create and submit the PAT for approval. And then once I do that, then that pop-up box comes up and it allows me to follow each of the steps of the process. So creating and submitting a PAT for approval. And then it gives me a note that might be needed for the users to understand a policy concern, or making sure that it's a prompt, in this case, a prompt of following the guide. Click next. And then it tells you where you're going to find that from your home menu. So you would find that the PAT functionality underneath grants management. And then it leads you to the project allocation under PAT, for which PAT is located. And then there's the project allocation template. It'll go to, well, you have to enter in your unique ID as an employee. And once you do that, you can click search. The searching will be able to give you then our menus for our PAT allocation template. It will allow us to search on a particular employee and give the allocations that we needed for that employee. What in this case, what projects are they being charged to in a particular time period? So that's a quick demo of our PAT. Talking about and talking through lessons learned and benefits. We have seen a tremendous reduction in the number of how do I do this calls to our production support team, because of the broad scope that we have in terms of end users touching grants at the various research sites across Kaiser. We had a big call volume in from our production team prior to implementing the Oracle guided learning. Because people are at their desks, they're trying to figure things out. They don't know why it's not working. And with our working in a very matrixed environment, we did not have a centralized approach to training. So this was a huge benefit for us in reducing the number of production calls. We also were able to use the guides for all of our high volume transactions and support any new functionality that's coming out. So we can send people to a particular guide when we have a new enhancement, or just, by the way, it might not be this, the policy has changed, so it's not how it was before. So you were putting in those pop-ups to help improve accuracy in the transactions that are being entered. Easier to engage our business after the draft guide was created than up front. We are able to have a more efficient way to learn the production environment, as well as improve and enhance the way in which we do our trainings. I really like the flash tips. I can't emphasize that enough, to inform our end users of various issues, and those could be entered in at any time when we notice that there might be some issues around how we are training, or how data is getting entered into the system. The task lists are also helpful, step-by-step processing guides. And then the job aids also, because we're no longer having to create manual job aids on paper that don't change over time. We're able to produce what's coming out of the system and allow the system to generate our job aids for us, reducing the manpower and manualness of keeping those job aids updated. And then again, the usage reporting and having those analytics at on a monthly basis from our organization has been tremendously helpful for me from a management perspective.
So, Teresa, I see a couple questions that are leading me to believe that we need to explain a couple of things. The first one is about You mentioned OGL as an additional application. Does it need to be purchased separately? Okay, so let's talk about that. So OGL is a SaaS application from Oracle. Okay, it means it's a completely separate license that you would be using, and as such, as a SaaS, it's you're paying for it as a SaaS. Okay, which means it's a subscription. The typical licensing is for a standard 3-year term, so you're paying every year for 3 years. That's a standard term. That application is just the platform where you can then build any kind of content that you would like to use on your PeopleSoft. And as part of licensing, we get you hooked up. We get you installed with PeopleSoft. We do a couple of proof of concept guides that we build with you to kind of explain and explore the different models for how you can build these guides. We do a training workshop, and then we do an ongoing assessment advisory for you. So that's all. There you go. So that's what we do as part of the licensing piece. Okay. So when you license it, you get all of these things. As I said, you get it for PeopleSoft, all your PeopleSoft pillars. That counts as one application. And then you get a couple additional applications. So these would be non-Oracle applications, or if you have anything else that you'd like to add to it, you can do that under that licensing model. It's based on total employee headcount. And if you want to talk about that, please ping me directly after this and we can work through that. Okay. So that's the licensing piece. The second question is, can we customize OGL to add more tips or change tips? So let's explain that. And let's go to the next slide, Teresa. As I said, when you license it, you only get the platform. So what we've done is we've built pre-built content. Okay. So Kaiser Permanente started from scratch because they were the first one. This is before SpearMC got involved, and they built all of this content. Okay, so they've got lots and lots of guides, but they build it from the scratch. Actually, worked with Oracle to build it from scratch. All the rest of all the rest of you guys, when you get the tool, the SaaS application, you would have no content, and Oracle isn't producing any content for PeopleSoft, but we are. And that's what we're looking at here. So we call it our starter kit of guides. We have roughly 140 HCM guides, about the same for financials, and we have about 105 campus solutions. By the end of this year, by around December, January, we'll have over 200 in each of those pillars. That content is then what we sell to you as part. You can do the licensing, and then you buy the content, and you can then modify that content to your heart's content. You can also build on top of that, which is where our training comes in on how to build that content. So there's nothing out of the box. Everything you've seen today, you wouldn't have if you just licensed the OGL. You would build it all from scratch. So there's nothing necessarily related to customization because you build all your content. So hopefully that answers the question. Um, Let's see, a couple more questions here. Are there any challenges you experience with using OGL? Anything you would like but isn't available? So, Teresa, if you'd like to answer that one.
So I think not necessarily. We have had really good experience in terms of building the content. From my perspective, I'm asking and giving information about the particular. Let's say we're working on a particular module. I'm giving input into what needs to be there, what needs to be clarified for a particular user. We go through internal testing. And so we get, again, some of our SMEs to look at the content itself and make sure that it is it's process oriented, it's intelligible for our common users, so that it's not something that's overcomplicated. So we do testing from that perspective, but we have had a really good partnership internally with our OGL team, and also working with outside consultants to help build each of the content.
So, Teresa, can you talk about that a little more? Because there's another question, follow up on that. How many resources do you need to maintain and update for changes or enhancements at Kaiser for your product areas? Can you talk about the roles and resources to do this?
Yeah, so I actually, because I'm more on the end user side, I know that I have two two main partners that I work with, one technical support and one coordinating support, individual that's on the IT side, and they work with me directly in the implementation and the changing. And then there's IT on the back end, actually doing some of the specifications and the actual production. The turnaround time is very quick for me, so we can get a module up and running or a component of a module up and running in less than I would say like 6 weeks. So it's pretty from the time I put in, if it's a small change, that's pretty much no problem. I haven't had any delays in that, but a pretty sizable module still comes across pretty quickly. I think because we have gone with the templated approach, we have a very easy way of implementation of the various guides.
Yeah, I would add to that, Teresa, that Kaiser is a very, very big organization with a lot of protocol, a lot of organizational sort of process. And so I would say your 6 week time frame there is probably pretty long compared to many other organizations who don't have as much in terms of protocol. So typically we see stuff getting published a lot faster, especially if it's something simple. Of course, there's things that are a lot more complicated. Let's say you take a brand new business process and you want to map it all out with a process guide. That's going to take a lot longer to get it right. But a lot of quick hitters, messaging, smart tips, those go up in a day. I mean, it really is
Yeah,
very, very fast. Let me
yeah.
a couple other quick hitters here. And if anybody has questions, feel free to keep putting them in there. All right, so analytics, metrics, those are stored. So there's a question about where those are stored and is there PII. So it captures the user name, the user ID, I should say, and what guide they process, but it doesn't capture any of the data that they're entering. So it says such and such a person ran this guide, but it doesn't actually capture what they're entering in PeopleSoft. So I'll let you determine if that's complies with your PII rules or not. In most all the customers that we've so far, that has not been an issue, even though that they've done full analysis of that to make sure that it complies with their own internal rules. I've had nobody come back and say it doesn't comply with that. Um, is there any automated testing for the guides? No, there's not. It's a great idea. But remember that the guide sits on top of PeopleSoft. So you can still use PTF and other tools to automate testing in PeopleSoft. There's no testing of the guide itself. And really, you'd want to have a little bit more a personal process on that anyway to make sure it's doing exactly what you would want. And so automated testing isn't really a thing that many people ask too much about with this. Is there approval review process for the content? Yes, absolutely. The migration process is a user security role. So in other words, and that can be isolated. So you can have a segregation of duties where somebody's developing in a non-prod environment and have a separate person who's actually reviewing and or approving and migrating to production. So those are all completely segregated that you can do. There's no flags. I would say there's no flags on the guides to say that's approved or reviewed or anything like that. But through segregation of duties, you can maintain a model where you have an approval review process and then migration from dev to test, or sorry, dev to production. And by the way, the publishing to production is literally just a checkbox. You just switch it and say publish. It's done. And it's published into production. It's very, very easy. You can continue to make changes once you publish to production. Those changes would be in non-prod and can be evaluated. It shows up as an unpublished revision, and you get to evaluate that again separately and then republish those changes back into production. Very, very easy. There's no migration through PeopleSoft App Designer, all that kind of stuff that you would see with PeopleSoft development. Do you have any customizations across your organization that require separate guides for different areas? I'll let you answer that one, Teresa.
So in terms of, so we had customizations, like the path that I showed earlier was a customized customization of the product, and then the content itself, then we did provide a user guide for that particular one. So the PAT demo that I went through is an example of a completely customized component of PeopleSoft, and then using a guide and doing guide modules for that.
So I think we're at time. Certainly reach out to Teresa for her experience with OGL at Kaiser, and I'm sure Teresa would be willing to hook you up with others that might be able to even offer other types of input, whether it's technical or whatever. I'm available to talk through everything, all these other little technical details, all those things, and how it works. We can do the live demo, of course. And like I said, we've got the customer panel in coming up here in a couple hours, where you're going to hear from 3 other organizations and how they're using OGL. So thank you. And Teresa, you need to leave it on the contact slide. This is all extra stuff in the appendix, but feel free to just leave it on the contact slide. So there's Jessica and Teresa, and then my contact information is at the beginning of this deck.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all. Thank you all for your time.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Teresa and Cameron.